Well, hello there. This is Group 3, and we're going to be talking about Old English Grammar by Justin, Brad, Leanne, Christina, and Chelsea.
The origins of modern English noun inflections. Old English grammar and modern English grammar are so different from each other, they seem to be different languages. We probably wouldn't even understand someone speaking Old English. In modern English, a pronoun's change is dependent on whether they are singular or plural and whether they are the subject, object, or the possessor. For instance, he or they learned all about Old English grammar. The he and they are the subject. The unfamiliarity of Old English grammar surprised him or them. The him or them are the object. His or their performance on the quiz was stellar. His or their is the possessor. Also, in modern English, nouns changed based on a singular, plural, and possessor. The quiz or quizzes seemed easy. Quiz and quizzes is the subject. But I bombed the quiz or quizzes. The quiz or quizzes is the object. The quizzes or quizzes effect on my grade shocked me. The quizzes or the quizzes is the possessor. The only change to quiz or quizzes was when it changed possession. The reason we have these rules in modern English stems from Old English rules. Nouns in Old English used to mark singular or plural as ours do, but they also used to mark gender, masculine, feminine, and neutral. We maintain the same rules for marking numbers, singular or plural. But in Old English, gender influenced inflectional endings of nouns. If we use the same sentence, the instructor gave the class a quiz, the ending of instructor, class, and quiz would all have different endings to reflect their role as subjects, direct object and indirect object respectively. Old English had 4 major case endings: nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. The first major case ending of nominative describes nouns that are primarily subjects. Second, the accusative nouns are direct objects or an object of a preposition. Third, we have genitive, which are nouns indicate possession. Lastly, we have dative nouns, which are indirect objects or an object of a preposition. Old English classified nouns as strong nouns or weak nouns. Some strong nouns include stone, bone, or man. Weak nouns are things like name and son. Knowing this helps to understand the regular plural ending s and the irregular plural ending of es. The other endings dropped away as the language changed. Old English weak nouns took a final an to form the plural. Modern English today still reflects this in some words, such as children or brethren. Now we have the gender of things. English is a Germanic language, and Germanic languages have a grammatical gender, much like the Romance languages of French and Spanish. However, English is excluded in that. This was not always the case. All nouns carried gender, masculine, feminine, or neutral. Modern English does not employ this rule. Instead, we use natural gender. Inanimate objects have a neutral gender, and animate objects use things apparent gender, masculine, or feminine. The familiarity of personal pronouns. Modern English personal pronouns look familiar to Old English, despite the less familiar spellings. Modern English pronouns still mark case to some extent. This is because the pronouns are typical of closed class items. These have changed less over time versus other words in the lexicon. For example, the aspirated H of hit has eroded in modern it. In some instances, Dialectual variants have replaced standard forms. The second plural form you generalize to become both the nominative and object form in the plural, and in the singular, replacing thou and thee. The many faces of modifiers. In modern English, the article the and the demonstrated pronoun that are invariant. They always appear in one form. In Old English, the equivalent of the and that took a different form, depending on the noun's number, gender, and case. Adjectives don't decline in modern English either, except as comparatives and superlatives, but they did in Old English with a vengeance. Old English adjectives had to agree in gender as well as with their nouns. Romance and most Germanic languages agree with their nouns. Whether an adjective appears in strong or weak form in Old English is based on whether or not it is in predictive or attributive position, that is, after a linking verb or before a noun. Just as there were strong or weak adjectives and nouns in Old English, there were also strong and weak verbs. The tense of a strong verb was determined by the process of abla. Abla is described by Webster's as a systematic variation of vowels in the same root or affix or in related roots or affixes, especially in the Indo-European languages, that is usually paralleled by differences in use or meaning. Take the word sing. Sing would be our present tense, and due to abla, sang is past tense, and sung is the past participle. These are some of the strong verbs that have survived the transition from Old English to modern English. Most, however, did not. There were also different types of these strong verbs in Old English. We can see the differences with swim, swam, swum, similar to sing, sang, sung, in comparison to drive, drove, driven. Weak verbs in Old English are now just considered normal verbs in modern. These regular verbs are conjugated by suffixes such as ed. Although most verbs became weak or regular verbs, some verbs have actually gone through a transition of weak to strong. We wouldn't say, I digged a hole nowadays, but in Old English, that was actually the more proper form. Old English also commonly employed a different word order, specifically the subject-object-verb order. With such a word order, a sentence would sound like, Mike cake ate. Our word order in modern English is subject-verb-object, which reads more like, Mike ate cake. In Old English, sentences also depended a lot on coordination. Although this seems to hold true plenty in spoken modern English, written modern English relies more on the subordination of word order in sentences. Thanks for watching.